Alberta at Noon. I'm Andrew Brown. All kinds of industries in Alberta are hiring. There are literally thousands of jobs out there. And you'd think that's a good thing, right? But employers are struggling to fill those positions. And today on the show, we'd like to hear about your experience. Welcome to this Tuesday edition of the show. I'll be filling in for Judy Aldis for the next few weeks. The latest numbers show 100,000 jobs are sitting empty in Alberta. That's work that could be done if people were ready and qualified. But at the same time, thousands of Albertans are out pounding the pavement searching for work. So there must be some kind of disconnect there. As an employer, do you see it? Do you have empty positions you haven't been able to fill? What has that meant for you and your company? Give us a call, 1-866-468-4422. That number's 1-866-468-4422. We'd also like to hear from workers today. If you've been out looking for work, what's your experience been like out there? Have you decided to maybe stop working for a while, to retire, semi-retire, work less often, more often? Give us a call, 1-866-468-4422. You can also email us today, alberta@noon@cbc.ca. And we have two guests with us for the hour today on Zoom. Keith Plowman has a contracting business in Fort McMurray. He's also the president of the Construction Association there. Hello, Keith. And Mike Holden is the vice president and chief economist with the Business Council of Alberta. Hi, Mike. How you doing?
Hey, good. How are you?
I'm great. Thank you both so much for joining us. Keith, I think I see that you're muted there. And I'd like to start with you. Can you first just start by telling us about your company and your experience trying to find workers?
Sure. First, I want to say thanks for the opportunity to be here. When we look at talking about labor and hiring, I believe it's probably going to be one of the most significant issues that we're facing lately. So I appreciate the opportunity to be here and talk about it. So I have a medium-sized landscaping company in Fort McMurray. We do a lot of work for the municipality, for builders, different contracts. So we do the main install of planting trees and shrubs and that sort of thing around new builds. So I'm constantly looking for people. In Fort McMurray, it's a little bit of a different animal up here. We've got the oil sand sites, so a lot of skilled laborers and operators tend towards those jobs. And so my company is really specific. It's more of an entry-level thing where people want to learn how to run some equipment or do some labor work in preparation for getting onto bigger and better things. So this year, we've especially had trouble hiring people. It's probably the first time since I've been in business that we use the usual online methods. I don't know if I can say it on here, but Kijiji and Indeed and all those kind of things.
Yeah, go ahead.
And there's positions where we didn't even get a single applicant. And I've never seen that before. It's quite strange. I'm not sure what the trend in that is. If, like you said in the opening, if people just are not interested in work or what that is, but I've never seen it before where we didn't get a single application for a job. So
when you get no applications on a job, where do you go from there?
To be honest, I had to drive a dump truck for a while myself.
Yeah.
So, you have to do a lot of that stuff yourself. I'm tapping into friends and family and those sort of things. So you just keep looking and keep pounding the pavement. But it definitely is an issue, and I think it's one that's not going away. So
how many openings do you have now, or how many workers are you looking for?
So we do a lot of seasonal work. So right now we're sort of getting into the slow time. But during the season, I probably require around 20 positions. We filled some of those, but some of the more technical stuff, the equipment operators, truck drivers, class 1 and 3 drivers are really hard to find right now.
And what has that meant for you and your business, Keith?
Again, it's we used to have a saying in landscaping: if you can find the work, then you can source the people and the materials to do that work, and it's become that you can't do that anymore. So it's can I build a team to get this work done? First of all, can I find those people, or do I have to turn away work because we simply can't find people?
And did you have to turn away any work over the summer, over your busy period?
Yeah, our revenues have been a little lower this year, just because, like I said before, we would strategically bid everything and then staff to that level, and now we're having to look at that and say, listen, with the people that I have, can we actually do that work? So it's kind of shifted our business model even.
All right, I want to bring Mike into the conversation now. Mike, what do you think when you hear a story like Keith's?
Well, unfortunately, hearing a story like Keith's, what strikes me is how often I hear similar stories, and it's not isolated to any one industry or any one business or any one region of the province. And in Keith's case, some of his the fact that he's in Fort McMurray does make it a little bit of a different beast than it is elsewhere in the province for sure. But it's based on our members tell us, and again, like I said, it's across industries, across businesses that they're all struggling to find workers, and whether that's in some cases it's entry level, in some cases it's very specialized skilled trades. It's a wide range of areas, and so it's concerning because it's not it's hard for the economy to grow and to recover post COVID or post lockdowns, I guess, if we can't find the workers to do the work that's available.
Mike, what do we know at this point about why these jobs aren't being filled?
There are a lot of reasons, and it's hard to pinpoint it down to any one thing. So among the trends that we're seeing that we think are contributing to it, first of all, there's a skills gap problem. So you mentioned in the introduction that there's over 100,000 empty jobs or vacant jobs in Alberta. There's also slightly larger number than that of people who are unemployed, and there's always going to be people unemployed, even if they're just kind of in transition from one job to the next. But that there's still people out there who are looking for work, and so I think that one of the challenges that businesses are having is that they're looking for people who have specific skill sets, whether it's specific technical skills, specific trades skills or trade certifications, ability to operate heavy machinery, technology, programming skills, engineering skills, whatever it might be. And so there's a gap there. I think that's one of the issues. And the second one, in a very broad sense, is that the aging population, I think, is a contributing factor here, because so if you look at people who are actively looking for work, people who are kind of in that cohort, that sort of core working group age of 25 to 54, which is kind of how it's laid out. Those people are as active looking for work as ever. But older workers, once you hit about 55 and older, participation rates tend to drop off. So some people retire, some people semi-retire, or they're not interested in working as much, or in some cases they're laid off and have a hard time finding jobs coming back. And as the population gets older, more and more people end up shifting into that cohort, and that means that the available labor force isn't growing as fast as the number of jobs available are growing.
All right, we're taking calls for the hour. The phone number is 1-866-468-4422. We'd like to hear from employers and from people who are looking for work. What is your experience out there? Because there are a lot of jobs in Alberta sitting empty right now. That number again, 1-866-468-4422. And Mike, before I bring in our first caller, you mentioned that this is an issue across all sectors, but are there any sectors right now that are particularly hard hit by this?
Yeah, there are, and it is across all sectors. The ones that are having the hardest time right now are the hospitality-related industries, accommodation, food services, tourism industries. The job vacancy rate there is over 10%. I mean, like 1 out of every 10 jobs is vacant, and so that's part of that is those that industry has been slow to recover. Those are the ones that were most impacted by COVID measures, and so they've been trying to bring people back in, but are having a really hard time. And then outside of that, the other ones that really stand out are construction industries are having a hard time, transportation, whether it's trucking or aviation, agriculture, office administration, and healthcare. Those are the worst on the list. They're having the hardest time.
All right, let's bring in a caller. Anthony is our first caller for the hour. He's in Calgary. Hello, Anthony.
Hey, how you doing?
Good, thank you. Thank you for calling. So what's your experience out there?
So we recently just had to fill two positions back to back. We lost one of our employees to going on for additional education, and then another one moved house and so couldn't commute to the office. And we went looking for a registered dental assistant. We own a small family practice here in northwest Calgary.
Mm-hmm.
And we spoke to one of our current registered dental assistants, and I can't confirm these numbers with sake, but what she mentioned to me was her graduating class was a class of 27, and that normally they're coming in around 120 people graduating per year. So I think COVID really affected the number of people actually going to school and wanting to maybe do their education predominantly online. And then especially for something like dental, it restricted their clinical hours, right? So they weren't able to actually see patients in person because of the COVID restrictions. So we've struggled, and I know some other clinics that we're in contact with have struggled as well finding RDAs.
And that's what they're thinking. COVID is the reason that graduating class is so much smaller than usual?
I believe so, yes.
And what do you do if you can't find dental assistants?
I guess what you do is you post ads, and then you're potentially poaching from other clinics where they've potentially got unhappy employees, or employees that are moving office, or employees that are maybe moving locations in the city and no longer want to, drive to their current place of employment, or people looking to potentially negotiate, better conditions and better salary and better pay.
All right, Anthony, thank you so much for the call.
You're welcome.
Mike, are you hearing a lot of stories like Anthony's?
There's such a range of stories, and this is why, like I said at the beginning, there are it's difficult to pinpoint causes. Like, there's some broad trends that are contributing to that. This one, to be honest, that is not a story I've heard very often, but it makes complete sense. If you don't have any sort of professional designation which requires those sorts of clinical hours, it's you can't get those in a COVID related shutdown. So it's that one is a new experience from what I've heard, but it certainly adds to the pile of complicating factors that are contributing to the problem.
Keith, I want to bring you back in here. What are you hearing from other people in the construction industry about this right now?
So similar to what Anthony was saying, just about not having the graduating class. Like, we've looked at the numbers, and they say across Canada in the next 4 years, we're going to need 125,000 new apprentices just to meet the needs of what's happening. And not unlike what Anthony said, there's not people that are actually going into those programs. And there's various reasons for that. I don't know if it's like the volatility of the industry or what's happening, but the trades seem to be not a path that everyone's choosing. When my kids were growing up, I used to tell them, make sure you stay in school so you can be a doctor and a lawyer. And maybe sort of that sentiment's rubbed off, and no one really wants to go the trade route anymore. But we're finding that there's huge gaps there. They say for every, the ratio is 7 to 1. And by that, I mean, for every journeyman person that is retired, for every 7 journey persons that is retired, there's only 1 that's going into the program to replace them.
Wow.
So there's a huge gap there.
That doesn't sound sustainable, Keith.
No. And we really need to look at a solution like that. So, I've got a couple of opinions
good. Share
on
them.
that. I don't know if you want me to go ahead and share them.
Yeah.
So the first one's going to be immigration stuff. Like, if we don't have the birth rates here, and if people aren't going into that, there is, people that are looking to come to this country that already have some training in that. Right now, I think the way the federal government is set up, the points are more geared towards the professional industries, doctors, healthcare workers, that kind of thing. We probably need them to look at getting some skilled tradespeople prioritized and brought in. The second thing is, again, to remove that stigma on trades and that path and career path. Right now, if you look at some of the numbers, if a tradesperson that's just completed their school is usually collecting a better wage than someone that has a university degree and starts in an entry-level position. So, maybe we need to get some of those numbers out there and encourage people to get into the trades, and that it's a viable career option.
Mike, what do you think of some of Keith's proposed solutions there?
Oh, I think he's right on the mark. And, like you mentioned earlier, when Anthony called about the clinical hours in dentistry, like that, the COVID related education impacts is, I think, a case that is there are isolated cases where that's true, but this broader point that Keith brought up about this kind of systemic bias towards university education over trades education, that I think is 100% on the mark. And the numbers that he pointed out are ones that I've heard before for sure. And we do have a bit of a stigma where we just kind of assume, you kind of tell your kids that a good job comes from going to university.
Mhm.
And that's something that has been so ingrained in us that we have a hard time not seeing it that way. But he's right. I mean, you could have a fulfilling career. You can make at least as much money, if not more, in a lot of cases, in a trades position. And when I talked before about this kind of skills mismatch problem, this is part of what it is that we end up funneling people into, or people choose certain education pathways that might not necessarily produce produce jobs or give them the skills they need for all the jobs that are sitting out there waiting for them.
All right, we're talking jobs for the hour today, and we're taking calls. The latest numbers show 100,000 jobs are sitting empty in Alberta, but thousands of Albertans are also looking for work. There's a skills gap out there. So we're looking to hear from people who are looking for workers and people who are looking for jobs. Call us 1-866 468 4422. That number is 1-866 468 4422. And let's bring another caller in now. Rumi is on the line from Calgary. Hi, Rumi.
Hi.
Thank you for calling. And I see you have extensive experience in healthcare in the UK. What's your experience been here?
I've worked with the NHS in the UK as an occupational therapy assistant for many years, and then I worked in mental health sector for several years in a deputy manager position before coming to Canada. But I was a caterer by trade as well after college. So that's something, once you have as a skill, it never goes. So I worked in the restaurant industry here in Canada for a while, and then worked in the health and care sector for many years. And after COVID, I lost my spouse, but I wanted to reset myself and then get back to working in the health and caring sector. So I've applied for a service worker position with Alberta Health Services, several of which were advertised. It states clearly that they would only contact people if they were selected for interview. I never got back any response, but strangely, I find that every time I apply for a new position that's available, I get a reply saying position that whatever I applied for, another candidate has been selected, which is strange. It kind of goes against what they're stating on their website, and I find it strange that for someone like me, I cannot even gain even one interview unless there's a bias or some kind of issue, which I doubt with my extensive training and experience.
So your experience here, Rumi, is that you're applying for jobs and you're not hearing from anyone at all. They're just sending you an email essentially and saying it's full.
Yeah.
Like you haven't made it to the interview process or anything.
Yeah, I find it very strange that they're looking for people, and yet people like myself who are looking at advertisements and applying are not getting anywhere. And I've checked with my CV and resume and all that, which people sometimes doubt, and there is no doubt in that area. So I find it rather strange, and I sometimes think, and then I looked online as to how to contact AHS for careers and all that, and all I saw was one video of and I don't mean to raise this as an issue, but I just saw another white Anglo-Saxon woman there showing a small clip about another service worker who is again a white person, and I thought that's hardly diverse according to the website.
Are you looking for work and maybe having trouble finding something that matches your skills? Have you decided to work less or maybe retire or semi-retire? You can call us 1-866 468-4422. You can also send us an email, alberta@noon@cbc.ca. And we have two guests with us for the hour today. Mike Holden is a VP of Policy and Chief Economist with the Business Council of Alberta. And Keith Plowman has a contracting business in Fort McMurray and is the president of the Construction Association there. And I'd like to start this half hour with you, Mike. Just, do you have any advice for employers who maybe can't find anyone to take a job? What kind of things should they be doing? And is it as simple as just paying more?
Well, there are a couple of things, and I think in some cases, paying more might be something that businesses do have to do. I think that more important than that, I think that you need to take a chance on people, I think. And so I even thinking back to my own hiring experience over the years, you sometimes the unconventional choices, sometimes there are diamonds in the rough. Sometimes you can find people that, it's worth putting in the time and effort needed to fill in whatever skills gaps you have. You can't teach work ethic, but you can teach skills. And so I think that there's always an opportunity to bring somebody in, find a diamond in the rough, find somebody who's had a difficult time finding work in the past, and that person could potentially be the most loyal, hardworking worker you've ever had. So wages might be one answer, but keeping an open mind about who you would want to bring in, I think, is an important step as well.
How about you, Keith? Have you made any changes to try to attract workers?
Well, yeah, we have. I think one of the things that we have to realize is that sort of the culture has changed in the workforce. Like back in the day, hand quotes, you could poach someone from another company by giving them an extra $1 or $2 an hour. And as soon as you gave them some money, they were on your team. But I think what people are looking for out of work now has really changed. It's not just compensation anymore. So, like the last caller that we talked to, Remy, mentioned, there's training. Can you give these employees new skills? That's important to them. Company culture. Is it a good place to work? Mm-hmm. Do they like coming to work in the morning? Work hours and, flexibility with that kind of stuff. I honestly think we're going to have to look at some of those different things, especially post-COVID. After everyone was on Zoom for 2 years, we're going to have to really think about how our workplaces are changing. And it's not just about the money anymore. There's so many other factors, work-life balance, all those kind of things that come into play now. So as an employer, you really need to look at that. It's not just a matter of throwing money at people anymore.
Yeah, I know. I definitely value those things as much as money. Let's bring in another caller. John is on the line from Edmonton. Hi, John.
Hi, how are you doing?
Good, thank you. Thank you so much for calling. So what's your experience?
I've been certified as an engineering technologist for more than 30 years. My last long-term gig was working at Syncrude as their senior technical writer, working with the standards and specifications group. I didn't have to understand the plumbing or the cement or process control, electrical. I had to be able to help the engineers and technologists with putting together their specifications, using my skills with in English and with Microsoft Word. About 10 years ago, the economy started taking a bit of a turn. And I was a contractor, and contractors are let go right away. I have been lucky to have reasonably consistent work, but not doing what I really like, which is the technical writing. There are now lots of opportunities for technical writers, but when I look at the requirements, they're very, very specific about the software that you have to be able to use. And in some cases about having worked in a particular industry, as if that would make any difference. When I worked at Syncrude, it made no difference at all. Right. I was able talk to the engineers and technologists, understand what they needed, and work on their specifications as if I was an expert myself. And it's really, when I look at these applications, when these job opportunities now, I don't even bother to apply. They're so specific that I don't know how long those jobs go wanting.
So I'm curious, John, I've got a question for you. When you see these postings, do you think there's no point in applying, or do you think maybe this isn't a job I don't want?
In some cases, I have applied and heard nothing. And the more that has happened, the more I look at these highly specific postings and think, I'm not even going to waste my time. I have other things to do, and so I just don't bother. I am fully employed at the moment, not the way I would like to be. I deliver auto parts, which is okay, but I would really prefer to be back doing that technical writing work. And it just I don't know what I'd be interested to hear what your guests have to say about the approach that employers are taking, and maybe that's part of the issue, is that they're maybe being too specific about what they want, and maybe that's why they're not finding the people they want.
All right, anyway. Sean, I really appreciate the call, and I'm going to bring Mike in on that now. Mike, what do you think of some of the experiences John is having out there, and with the job postings and all the requirements?
Well, it is something that it's not something that's a new story to me. You've heard those kinds of things before, where an employer posts a position that's available where you need to speak 6 languages and have 4 different degrees and 15 years of experience and want to do it for not a whole lot of money. And so there's a lot of stories out there that are like that. And so it's hard for me to comment on case by case bases like that. I think in some cases like the issue about specific software that John mentioned there. So I mean, the company may have strict compatibility requirements because that software is integrated throughout their systems, or there could be other specific reasons why they have such a niche target focus. But I think that he does speak to a valid concern, I think, and that is that in some cases businesses are looking for such specific unicorn employees, that can do that. The business can identify 4 or 5 small gaps that they have in their organization, and are hoping to find a single person that can do all those little things. And so that there might be a trend like that in some cases. I'm not sure it's a universal one, but I think that it's not unheard of for that to be the case.
So then, from an employer's perspective, in a case like that, and I know you don't want to get into specific cases, and it's tough to zero in on something specific like this, but is that an opportunity for a company to say, hey, look, if we want you to use this certain type of software, but we'll teach you how to use it?
Oh no, it absolutely is, for sure. And I think that's the kind of thing we need to do more of, just to address this issue, is businesses being more willing to train their employees. I think that some of the international data show that Canadians as a whole tend to, I don't have provincial data, but Canadians as a whole, the businesses tend to underinvest in training their own employees, which is part of the reason why we have the specific programs that we do federally and provincially. So there are opportunities for them to do more, for sure. And I think also there's opportunities for the businesses to work with post-secondary education providers, both at the university and technical school and trade school levels, to make sure that people are coming out of those programs with the kinds of relevant skills that are needed.
And training a worker is expensive. So, Keith, I guess if you do decide to make the investment to train someone, you really do want them to stick around, right? What do you do? Is there something that you need to know before you invest in training someone?
So I just want to say that, first of all, I sympathize with John. As a business owner, I think sometimes if I applied for a job with my own company, I wouldn't be qualified to get hired. So some of those things, when I look at it, and again, this is just a personal opinion of mine, I think one of the things that companies are really going to need to start focusing on in the future is not necessarily technical skills, I think those need to be there, and sometimes those can be taught. But it's going to be character and work ethic. And if somebody has a willingness to learn and wants to learn, has a passion for that stuff, there's technical things that you can teach or bring them along. And oftentimes, if I'm doing an interview or whatever, and you're looking through a resume or an application, you don't see some of those other things like work ethic, like passion, like some of the other life skills and knowledge that they bring to the table. So again, I don't have necessarily a strategy on how to bring that out, but I think in the future that is going to be something that employers are going to have to look at, and I think work ethic is key to that.
All right,
I value that very high in my own opinion. So
let's get another caller involved in the conversation here. Bonnie is on the line from Calgary. Hi, Bonnie.
Hi.
Thank you for calling. Yeah, you're on the air, and I see you're a former teacher.
Yes, I am. I taught for 20 years. I have many valuable experiences. I've taught people with children with disability. I've taught adults how to read. I've taught Indigenous people. I've taught special needs. And I cannot even get a job. I can't get an interview, nothing. Same like your other caller. I've applied for over 50 jobs. I've had one interview, and I'm 50 years old. When they saw me, I didn't get the job.
So what are they telling you?
So like your other caller said, I will get emails saying that another candidate has been chosen, or I won't get anything. Or the one interview I did get, I had spoke to them on the phone, and it almost sounded like I had the job. And then when they saw me, they told me, oh, they selected another candidate, and then they posted the job again a week later.
Oh, that's tough. I'm sorry to hear that. And so you think it's because of your age?
Absolutely.
Yeah.
I do.
All right, Bonnie.
Nobody wants to hire a 50-year-old.
Hey, hang in there. It's not true across the board. Bonnie, thank you so much for calling.
Okay, thank you.
Mike, I want to ask you about that. Is that a common concern for people who maybe 50 years and older?
Yeah, it is a concern we've heard for sure. And so, I mean, I mentioned sort of at the beginning of the hour that once people hit sort of their 50s, many of them tend to start to withdraw from the labor force and retire. But in this case, this is also a part of that problem, where employers aren't necessarily. They'll post a job but will tend to favor younger workers for a range of reasons. There might be perception that they have more up-to-date technical skills, or that they're, more malleable in the workforce, or maybe maybe the employer thinks they might command a lower wage or something like that. So there's a range of reasons. And in cases like this, I'd suggest that anybody who's got difficulty and problems like that, if you contact local staffing agencies, they can they can do the interview for you. You're independent and anonymous, and then you're in a pool where you can be offered to candidates, and then the agency itself will be able to identify businesses who don't have those kinds of systemic biases, and can put you forward as a preferred candidate if you match the other descriptions.
It's just so difficult to apply for a job and then to not get it, and then to see it posted again.
Oh, absolutely.
It's just
absolutely
makes it hard to apply again. It must, right? All right, let's bring in another caller. Gary is on the line from Lethbridge. How you doing, Gary?
Hey, good. How are you?
Good, thank you. Thank you for calling. So, what are you seeing out there?
Oh, great topic. Well, a couple of things I can weigh in on the academic pursuit versus the trades pursuit. I have a daughter pursuing her PhD in Europe and a son who's just got his welding ticket.
Right.
Both diverse directions, but both happy with what they're doing. Definitely one costs more than the other, and I imagine you can do the math around that. But, people got to do what they want to do. Money's definitely got to be a consideration. I think work ethic is the backbone of any pursuit. That has to be nurtured as a parent. So I'll leave that at that. But definitely we need to advertise the benefits of pursuing the trades, because the money's good, the lifestyle is good. It's downplayed, I think, far too much. The other item that I could definitely weigh in on is what you've been talking around about, job postings and the specifications around the qualifications and the list of items that a person needs to check off a box in order to qualify for a job has become ridiculous. I don't know if it's because human resources writes those job descriptions and qualifications more so than maybe the people who are involved in the jobs, the supervisors, the managers, etc. But I can tell you that there's very few people who meet all the qualifications on any job posting these days. We've got to definitely start pursuing the folks that have the raw talent, and definitely don't overlook the 50 plus, because there's some solid workers out there still in great shape, great mental facility, and have a ton of experience. And that is a pool that cannot be disregarded, like your last caller was talking about.
Gary, I really appreciate the call. Thank you so much.
Hey, you're very welcome.
And I want to go to you first here, Keith, to respond to Gary. And he talks about, how kids should be encouraged possibly to get into the trades, right? And maybe it's just as simple as encouraging kids to pursue what they like and what they're good at.
I think that's definitely part of it. I can give you from my own experience as a landscaper, a lot of it is really hard work, manual labor. You're out there sweating and lugging things around. But in the end, some of the satisfaction that I get out of it is I can get in my truck and drive around and look back and say, wow, those trees look fantastic, or that piece of sod looks great. And, there's other benefits to that work. The money's good. And I think people need to have their eyes open to that. I talked before about having different motivations for doing each thing. And sometimes the trades, you don't get to see that. Like a carpenter can look and say, you know what, look at that house right there. I built that house. I did that with my own hands. Mm-hmm. I use the saw, I use the hammer, and that's quite satisfying. Or a welder, I made this with my own hands. And, that's some of the satisfaction that you get out of that you may or may not get going through a university. I mean, there's different ways and different ways that you can receive pleasure from different things, but don't discount the trades in that way, because, sometimes it's really healthy to look at it and say, I did that, and be proud of yourself and what you've accomplished. So,
all right, let's go back to the phone lines. Mohammed is on the line from Edmonton. Hi, Mohammed.
Hi, thank you for taking my call.
Thank you for calling.
I'm wondering if there is this connection between what universities must teach here and what the employers are looking for. Because in my case, I graduated, from NAIT in 2017, and I'm looking for an entry level, position, the employers are asking me, you don't have the qualification for the job. If I'm a recent graduate, how do I get experience, if somebody's going to hire me in the first place?
Yeah, where am I supposed to get experience if you don't hire me, right?
Yeah.
Mohammed, thank you for the call. And I want to bring Mike in on that. Just, do you think there's a disconnect between university and college programs and what workers are looking for, or employers, are looking for?
Do you mean in terms of like the types of jobs that they have available, or is it the experience factor? Yeah, there is just some degree for sure, and I think that a lot of it has to do with things we talked about today, about gaps in the construction, in unfilled jobs in construction, in specific technical fields, in skilled trades, in carpentry. In fact, I'm fascinated by Keith's story there, because so I'm an economist, which means I have the exact opposite experience that he does, where absolutely nothing I do has anything to show for it at the end of the day. And so I'm super jealous of that, to be totally honest. And so it's those kinds of rewards for your work are they're not to be underestimated, I think. And so I'm sitting here secretly jealous, thinking about a career change.
You took different paths, but you both ended up here on Alberta at noon. All right, it's the big time. And I also do want to ask you about experience, because he had a good point. They're saying, hey, I don't have enough experience. Well, where do I get the experience?
Yeah, that's a fair point. But it's also one that's not unique to the situation. I think that any one of us can go back and think about our own early years trying to crack into the labor market, and that was a concern that everybody's always had at every point. And so, I mean, I'm not sure how you go about fixing that problem necessarily, like from the outset. But there's between volunteer positions and internships. I think this is why a lot of schools, in fact, are going towards co-op programs and work integrated learning programs in order to help bridge that gap, so that so that if you're a new graduate and you're looking to enter into or join the workforce, you do have some relevant work skills. You've been with the company, you've done the things, you're aware of what being in that kind of work environment is like. And so I think that these kinds of programs that sort of bridge the pathways from to help people make the jump from education and training to a job, those are going to help.
All right, I'd like to read an email from Irene. Irene says, one of my sons tried apprenticing in one of the trades. He quit because of the toxic workplace culture. That needs to improve if you want to attract youth, because they have so many other options. Keith, what do you think when you hear a note like that from Irene?
Well, sorry to hear that, Irene. That's unfortunate. I think in any workplace, you're going to find that there's issues, but don't. Unfortunately, it sounds like he took that one experience and applied it to an entire life choice, which is unfortunate. Maybe try a different place. I do think it's an issue. I think that sometimes some of the older people that are in those positions maybe a bit jealous and are worried that their position is going to be taken or stuff like that. And some companies turn toxic, but don't throw the baby out with the bathwater, so to speak. There's lots of great companies to work for. Being in the trades is still a viable thing. You just need to find the spot that's right for you.
Yeah, and those kind of things.
Unfortunately, he had a bad experience. I wish he didn't, because it does put a bad name, especially for young people that are seeking to get into that. But he's going to find a spot where he fits and where he's able to make a difference, and where he's going to be able to make a good living doing that too. So encourage him to do that.
Yeah, and you make a good point. Those kind of experiences do exist in other industries too. And I'd like to read another email. This one's from Rob. Rob says, I'm 52 years old and I've been an electrician since 1994. I hated working in the trade in my first 2 years as an apprentice, digging ditches. I wanted to quit. I'll always remember my father sitting me down and saying, you only have 2 more years, then you have a trade ticket no one can take away from you. Keep at it and get it done. I took his advice. Since then, I've traveled all over the world, better than good wages, and will more likely always be employed, as there are less joining the trade, which is unfortunate. What do you think of Rob's email there, Keith?
That's a great story.
So good, right?
Power through it. The same thing. If I had $1 for every load of gravel that I've shoveled by hand, I would probably have quite a few dollars. You have to put in your dues, but at the end, you come out of it with a rewarding career. That's a great story. I'm glad to hear that, and congratulations. See, that's the kind of guy right there that you want to work with.
Yeah, that's right. And Mike, I've got a question for you before we go, because the province is advertising across the country saying Alberta is calling to try to bring skilled workers here. Do we know if that's working?
Well, it started working even before the campaign started, actually. So, Alberta's always been, like, if you look back over the last 20, 30 years, we've always been a magnet for people moving from other parts of the country to the province, except for like that sort of 2014 to 2021 period. So after the last oil price crash, we saw a steady flow of people out of Alberta. And that's just started to turn around in the last year or so. And so we have data up till spring, which suggests that I think 10,000 people on a net basis moved into Alberta. So 10,000 more moved here than moved away. And that's the best showing we've had in 8 years. And that predates this Alberta's Calling campaign. So I think that people are becoming aware of the opportunities that are here. And this campaign it's too early to say what effect it's had. I do know that from people I talk to who are in staffing agencies and who are hiring, they're fielding a lot of calls from outside the province. And a lot of people are interested in what's going on here. The economy in Alberta is doing quite well compared to other provinces. We've got a lot of big new investments coming in here, and there's there's at least a bit of a buzz around being here, plus much more affordable housing and lifestyle. So it's not a hard sale to make, and hopefully this campaign can help build on some of the momentum that started up even before it began.
And we've only got just about 20 seconds left. When do you think we'll know that that's making a difference?
Well, I mean, we could probably, it would take maybe another couple of months before we can see anything for sure.
Right.
I mean, between now and then, we can talk to some people who are hiring and see where their calls are coming from. And I think that I'm optimistic that this is going to help out.
All right, we're out of time. Mike, Keith, thank you both so much for joining us for the hour. Keith Plowman owns K Plowman Contracting in Fort McMurray. He's the president of the Construction Association there. And Mike Holden is the vice president of policy and chief economist with the Business Council of Alberta. Thank you to everyone who called and emailed today. Thank you to our two guests. My name is Andrew Brown. Thank you for listening.